وبعد. The embassy is a very unique concept. The American embassy is very unique. If you're in a different country, let's say for instance you're in France, or you're in China, or you're in Canada, even though the country is Canadian or French or Chinese, the moment you step foot into the American embassy, you are officially on American soil. So despite the embassy being in a different country, the parameters, the precincts of the embassy belongs to America. You're on American soil. That's why even if a criminal commits a crime and then goes on to American soil, they head straight for the embassy because that's American soil. You're not in Chinese or Canadian jurisdiction anymore. This is very interesting when you think about the masjid. The masjid is not only like an embassy, it's beyond an embassy. It's the embassy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Whether we're in Dallas, whether you're in New York, the masjid seems like it is part of the neighboring city, but no, it belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is Allah's soil on earth. And we have to understand it as such and not think that it doesn't earn a particular respect in my mind. So the masajid, inna al-masajid lillah, the masajid belong to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this whole week we've been discussing the etiquettes of the masjid, the responsibilities that we have towards the masjid. And just like in an embassy, the people at the embassy have a very high stake, have a very high status in government role. Otherwise, they can't get that job. They will give it to somebody they trust. Likewise, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he appreciated all the work that is done in the masajid. That if I, out of my own free will, clean up the masjid, I should think of it as my own home, so I should clean it up. I see something that needs to be fixed, I take it upon myself. These virtuous acts hold a lot of weight in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And just to give one example, there was a person who used to clean the masjid. A lady who used to clean the masjid. And the Prophet ﷺ would notice her come, clean the masjid and go. And then one day, she's not showing up. So the Prophet ﷺ, he's concerned. He asks the Sahaba that, where is she? She usually comes. And they responded by saying that she came, she cleaned up, and she used to do this all the time, but last night she passed away. And then we buried her, but since she's some random individual, we didn't want to disturb your sleep and wake you up regarding it. The Prophet ﷺ was so upset. And then he went to the grave, made dua for her, and emphasized her role. Why? In terms of lineage, in terms of finance, in terms of status, she may not have been on the top, but her work in the masjid, her voluntary dedication to helping the masjid really elevated her status. So, two things to conclude our conversation. One is, the masajid are very sacred in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When we think about coming into the masjid, we should visualize as though we're coming into the domain of Allah. We're not in Dallas anymore. We're not in anyone else's home anymore. We're in the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has certain requirements, certain conditions. خُذُوا زِينَتَكُمْ عِنْدَ كُلِّ masjid. Allah tells us, when you're coming to the masjid, dress appropriately. By the way, dressing appropriately doesn't mean you have to dress in a specific way. Like you have to come dressed like the way I'm dressed. No. I have to come dressed in a presentable fashion. I have my dirty clothes. I'm cooking, I'm playing sports, I'm sweating, I'm all, in a haphazard state, and I'm coming straight into masjid. No. I should be more presentable. If I'm going for some paperwork and I'm going to the embassy, I'm not going to go in my lungi and go in my half shirt and go smelling bad. No, I'm going to wake up early, come dressed, and because the embassy is very important. Likewise, the masjid is very important. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala inspire us to respect the masjid, to uphold the rights of the masjid, to revere the masjid, and be utilized towards the safekeeping of the masjid as well. Inshallah, after the remaining sunan, we're going to have our weekly hadith lesson. Everyone is requested to participate. Jazakumullahu khairan. Assalamu alaikum.